We hope you enjoy today's story. Ron Wizen was eager to return home to Amy, his wife of 10 years. She was not only physically attractive but also a talented cook and an exceptional lover. The day before, Amy had invited her new boss, Mike Armstrong, to dinner. According to her, he wanted to meet. Ron saw nothing untoward in the proposal and expressed his desire to meet the new boss, particularly given the short tenure of the previous two individuals in that role. The final incumbent departed after just a few months, citing the need for an extended period of creative reflection in Sri Lanka. The body of the man was discovered decapitated in his garage with his hands tied behind his back. The police ruled the death a suicide, although the genitals, which had been surgically removed, were never found. Ron noted the time and sent a message to his wife, informing her that he was already on his way. She responded immediately. Ron bid his secretary farewell and proceeded home. He paused to purchase a bouquet of roses for his wife, a gesture he enjoyed making to surprise her. She appreciated receiving tokens of his affection. She also liked thanking him for small gifts. As he turned onto the driveway leading to his house, he noticed a black Mercedes parked by the curb in front of his home. At least this person had the sense to stay away from his driveway. He entered the house and saw the man was attired in a manner that could be described as mid-level. The man, who appeared to be in his 40s, was seated on the couch. Ron observed that he was quite tall, appeared to be in good shape, and had a hint of gray at his temples. He was cleanly shaven, and a perpetual smirk was playing on his face. As Ron entered the room, the man stood up with a crooked smile and extended his hand. Ron shook it before apologizing. He proceeded to the kitchen and presented Amy with the bouquet, subsequently embracing her. Her countenance brightened as she accepted the flowers. "I must express my gratitude for this later," she murmured. Ron bestowed a kiss upon his wife's countenance and placed his hand on her posterior. "Now, be a gracious host and greet Mike," she instructed. Ron kissed her again. He returned to the living room and approached his bar, offering Mike a glass of whiskey, which he accepted. The two men sat in the living room after Ron poured the drinks. "You have a wife who is quite remarkable," Mike remarked, his smirk becoming even more noticeable. "I have to agree," Ron said. "She is the epitome of my life." "Then, I suppose you'll understand why I'm about to tell you what I'm going to do," said Mike. "Really?" Ron asked. "Yes," Mike replied. "I'm going to your pretty wife." "A bit," he said. "We'll be back soon." Amy gave him a knowing look. "Don't be long, dear," she said. "Dinner will be ready in about 15 or 20 minutes. "Great," said Ron. He returned to the front room. "I hope you didn't tell your wife what I said," said Mike. Ron shook his head no. No, he said. "Let's go to my cave." "Okay," said Ron, gesturing. Mike rose from his seat and accompanied Ron into his office, which served as a personal retreat. The space was adorned with various items, including photographs, commendation medals, knives, guns, and other collectibles. "Are you planning to propose to my wife?" Ron inquired. Mike inquired. "Do you have an issue with that?" Ron replied, "My wife informed you that I am an accountant who conducts research for a special operations group." "That is correct," Ron confirmed. "I am a certified accountant and I am employed by a combined federal and private operations group." "And private operations group, but I haven't always been an accountant." "Oh," said Mike. Ron then directed Mike's attention to the items on the wall. "You know, I used to serve in the military. Back then, I was a scout sniper. 200 meters is over a kilometer, and at that distance, the sound of the shot is undetectable. One moment, one is alive and breathing, and the next, one is dead." He then proceeded to retrieve a knife from a drawer on his desk and began to run his hands over the collection. Mike was visibly uneasy by this point, and Ron's subsequent display of a particularly large knife only served to exacerbate the situation. "Range kills," he said, holding the sharp blade so that Mike could see them. "There is a unique satisfaction in witnessing one's adversary take their final breaths in close proximity." Mike's face underwent a noticeable transformation, and his smirk dissipated. "Listen, Ron. This is not a personal matter," Mike muttered. But it is personal, Ron interjected. You just informed me that you intend to seek an audience with my wife. I am left with no choice but to view this as a personal affront. My intention is to make you aware of the potential consequences of your actions. I am of the opinion that the old adage, an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure, is applicable in this situation. I am confident that you will appreciate my perspective. I believe dinner will be ready soon. It would be prudent for us to return to the dining room. Mike nodded and observed in dismay as Ron hurled a knife at a thick target on the far wall. The knife struck the target directly, embedding in the center of the bedding. Ron said to Mike, who was now pale as ash, I like to practice halfway. They proceeded to the dining room, where Amy had set the table for three. She placed the bouquet Ron had brought home in the center, as she had done every time before. She seated Ron at the head of the table, to his left, and herself to his right. They sat down, and Ron took Amy's hand. He extended his hand to Mike, saying, We like to say a prayer. Prior to the consumption of food, Ron initiated a prayer, during which Mike took Ron's hand and bowed their heads and closed their eyes. Mike then followed suit, uncertain of what to expect. Ron thanked the Lord for the food about to be consumed and for the blessings bestowed upon their home and family. He further implored the Lord to continue bestowing wisdom and grace upon them. The prayer concluded with the words, Amen. Amy then uncovered the plates. Ron revealed that he considered Cornish hen to be one of his favorite dishes. He had begun cooking it on a slow fire earlier that morning. Ron then proceeded to take a substantial bite of the dish, prompting Mike to express his agreement. I concur, Mike replied, it is quite palatable. Ron then directed his attention to Amy, who was preparing the meal. He observed that Mike was looking at him with a nervous expression as he praised Amy's culinary abilities. There is no need for concern, Ron reassured him. I never harm anyone at the dinner table. Mike's face turned pale as Amy nodded approvingly. She then proceeded to provide a detailed account of the potential challenges associated with the dish, citing the likelihood of significant spillage and the subsequent necessity for thorough cleaning of the tablecloth. She further elaborated that the tablecloth in question was over a century old, a fact that Ron had previously disclosed to Mike. Did you know anything about this? Amy inquired. He's never mentioned anything to me. Is there anything like that? She inquired. Mike, is that true? Are you planning to do that? Amy, I never said that. Perhaps your husband misunderstood me. Amy inquired as to whether she should extend a welcome to Mike and his companions, offer them hospitality, and, in return, receive nothing but insults. Mike responded that the comment was merely a joke and that he was merely attempting to jest. Ron then interjected, stating that the comment was, in fact, a joke and that he was merely attempting to joke around. Amy then asked what the punchline was, indicating that she was not amused. Mike then clarified that the comment was not meant to be taken literally. Ron then brought up a previous incident, inquiring as to whether this was the same situation he had encountered with the husband of his previous romantic partner. Wife, you slept with Ron. I am confused. Could you please clarify what you mean by that? I am an investigator. I conducted research and found that you were terminated from your position at ASM Enterprises 3 months ago. This was after you were named in a civil suit for alienation of affection filed by the husband of the woman you were involved with. The lawsuit was filed by the husband of the woman with whom you were involved. He filed the suit after discovering you both in a state of undress in a hotel room. Mike regarded his plate, and Amy inquired as to the veracity of her suspicions. Mike replied in a subdued tone, confirming that he had engaged in an act that he now regretted. However, he asserted that it was a matter of the past. Ron then interjected, stating that he had also learned that Mike's former wife grew weary of her husband's infidelity and sought solace in a group called the Marriage Mutual Assurance Society, MMA. This information was corroborated by Mike, who also witnessed the video recording of the punishment she was to impose on him. Ron commented that the punishment was rather severe and thought it would prompt Mike to change his ways. However, this did not occur. Mike was perplexed by Ron's knowledge of this matter and inquired about the source of his information. To maintain confidentiality, Mike stated, I am an investigator with access to information that you may find surprising. My task force supported your wife in a way that you may have overlooked. He then recounted how, after contacting his wife, she had given him a choice: accept the punishment and remain in the marriage or agree to a fair divorce settlement. He believed that, rather than face the humiliation of such a punishment, he had opted for the latter. Ron agreed to the divorce. He then turned to Mike and said, "You know, you really dodged a bullet with that one." Mike asked, what punishment was she going to impose on him? Ron replied, they would tie Mike up and brutally beat his testicles. Amy said. Branded, huh? Yeah, Ron replied. Right on his ass. Mike recalled the memory, and his group saved him. Amy asked, Ron? Ron nodded. Unfortunately, it's clear he didn't learn his lesson. Maybe we should teach him that lesson, Amy said. Ron nodded. Perhaps we should. Here tonight, Amy said. Ron nodded. Perhaps you stumbled upon it. Something, he said, turning to face Mike, who was shaking his head vigorously and pleading with him not to do this. Ron shifted his gaze from Mike to Amy, who was watching the scene unfold with a curious expression. Why not? Ron asked, his tone implying that he was not convinced of Mike's sincerity. Perhaps we should teach you that it's not okay to sleep with other men's wives. He paused, his gaze fixed on Mike. I still have your ex. Perhaps we should invite her over to help teach you a lesson. I have plenty of things I can use to inflict a lot of pain on you, Ron said, looking at Amy. You know I still have that knife-throwing board in the basement, he continued. What are you talking about? Mike asked. The practice of knife-throwing is an art form that employs a variety of techniques and props. One such prop is a wheel of death, which is a board on which a half-naked assistant is strapped and the thrower attempts to throw knives as close to the assistant as possible without hitting her. He then suggested cutting off the testicles, to which Ron responded that it would be amusing. He then asked Amy if she was skilled at throwing knives, to which she replied that she was not as proficient as him. Ron then suggested using the spinning board, to which Amy responded that it would be enjoyable. She then proposed placing bets to see who could throw the knives the closest, to which Ron agreed. He rose from his chair, his face pale, eyes wide open, and body visibly shaking with horror. No, he said, his voice trembling. You people are insane. Listen, it was just a joke. Please, forget I said anything. He attempted to turn away, but Ron grabbed him, turned him around, and pressed him against the wall, keeping a hand on Mike's throat. Amy joined him with a two. Ron then produced a pronged serving fork. I'm sorry, but we're not joking, he said. Please, pleaded Mike. What do I have to do to make this stop, he asked. It's simple, Ron replied. From now on, you'll forget any thought of sleeping with my wife or any other wife except your own. You'll embody professionalism. No more working late, and certainly no more business trips out of town. With Amy, if I am not present, you will treat every woman with the respect she deserves. That is all. Mike inquired, and Ron responded in the affirmative. Ron stated that, for the most part, he will be watching and that if Mike messes up, he will pay the price he should have paid a long time ago. Mike acknowledged this and then asked if he had anything to say to them. Mike nodded again and stated, I am truly sorry. I will never do anything like that again with anyone. He said, please accept my apologies and forgive me. Ron looked at his wife. What do you think, dear? He asked, should we forgive him? She replied, we truly believe in forgiveness, so yes, this time, we'll forgive him. Ron loosened his grip on Mike's throat. He looked at his wife. So what? Do we have dessert? He inquired. I prepared a particularly exquisite cheesecake, she replied. Boys, would you care to sample a slice? Ron asked. Ron, you're the expert here, Mike replied, his eyes wide with dismay. Well, how about dessert? Ron pressed. Mike, you're the one who's been waiting for this, Ron said, gesturing to the dessert. I really need to go home, Mike replied, his voice trembling. Ron noticed Amy staring at Mike's pants and glanced down. He saw a wet spot on the back of Mike's pants. Ron observed the odor emanating from Mike's person and stated, I comprehend your rationale for departing. He then advised Mike to proceed and recall our discussion. As Mike proceeded toward the front door, both individuals noted the presence of a moisture stain at the rear of his trousers. Ron inquired, "Can you believe he actually?" "Indeed, it is rather distasteful," Amy responded. He had even presumed that he might have the opportunity to engage in sexual intercourse with her. Ron laughed, hearing the sound of rapidly moving vehicles. He then turned to his attractive wife and said, "I am currently experiencing a high level of sexual arousal due to your presence." She then removed her undergarment and ripped off her dress, sitting on the table where Mike had just been sitting. She then proceeded to remove her bra and spread her legs apart, indicating her desire for immediate gratification. Ron, in response, lowered his pants and approached her. Amy, in a suggestive tone, inquired about the longevity of the cheesecake. Ron, in a suggestive tone, replied that he believed it would last until the following day. Author's note: in 2013, a decapitated man with the corpse of a man with his hands and feet tied was discovered in his garage in Tulsa, Oklahoma. Police confirmed that the death was a suicide, though they did not provide further details, suggesting that the man had hanged himself. Thank you for your attention and for listening to the end. If you found this information interesting, please subscribe, like, and leave a comment.